Welcome to the Zachrilege Cast podcast, YouTube video, interview program in which the less I talk, the better. This is episode 41, which is my age. How weird. We are recording live on December 15th, 2015. I'd like to thank Letha Hughes for being on the show last week. Please follow her on Twitter. That's LETHA_Hughes to be properly educated and stuff. So tonight's show is going to hit you in the feels, so that's why I have beer. Westbrook goes is what we're starting with tonight. That's actually a soda without caffeine for you just listening. Tonight we have the co-hosts of the Unequally Yoked podcast, Naomi and Neal, your average Mormon and ex-Mormon married people who decide to talk about it on a podcast because I assume it's cheaper than therapy. They put it all on the show, so let's give a large virtual hand and welcome to the show, Naomi and Neal.
Welcome to. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
And we'll have Neal be on camera, and Naomi might wave her once in a while. She feels like it.
I'm here.
What's the official name of your studio?
The Winter's Quarters Studio. It's an homage to the winter quarters that the Mormons stayed at on their way across the plains, just outside of Nauvoo.
Aha. Is that the one just outside Chicago, right? Illinois?
Yeah, yep.
Excellent. So let's see. Usually I do a kind of a ask about your religious background, so I might as well do that because Naomi is the Mormon and Neal is the former Mormon, but you both, of course, were Mormons in your previous life, but sounds like you grew up in kind of different, I don't know, more liberal, more conservative versions. Could you talk about that?
Definitely.
Go ahead, Naomi.
Yeah. I think Neal growing up, it was not only conservative and strict, but in my opinion, some of the doctrines taught were not doctrines, just to be frank. I don't know that I would call me liberal, I guess just because I grew up that way. Maybe I am. But we frequently had really deep discussions about doctrine, and it was like a normal Sunday afternoon discussion that we would have and kind of got into the nitty-gritty details, which he never did when he was younger.
But I did on my mission.
A little.
A lot.
Really?
Yes. I mean, we had one conversation with the elders where we decided that the snake in the Garden of Eden used to be a dinosaur, and the dinosaur lost its legs so it could become a snake.
Okay, that is not the kind of conversations we had.
One way to put it, I suppose. The one dinosaur that existed then.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, that's not how it worked for us. No.
Yeah, but I had a pretty typical Mormon boy upbringing.
For living in a small town. I mean, I was in the leadership of my youth groups like almost every other kid was. And as was I, yeah.
Eagle Scout. Went on my mission at 19 and came home, and we got married about 5 months after I got home. So that's pretty typical.
Now you both somehow, I'm from Canada all of a sudden. You both from, is it around Salt Lake City or just Utah you're from?
Yeah, I was closer to Salt Lake. I was about 20 minutes away in South Jordan. And Neal was in Price. That's
Price, Utah.
2.5
2 hours south of Salt Lake.
Yeah.
Carbon County, coal country.
Hick.
But how were you two able to meet cute?
There's a little college there.
Yeah, there was a college in Price called College of Eastern Utah, and we were in the same congregation, and she talked, and I pursued her.
Hardcore pursued
very relentlessly. And we ended up talking and decided we wanted to get married about 7 days later.
Mm-hmm.
But Naomi, how did Neal get you, like, kind of make you turn the corner and say, you know what, maybe this guy's marriage material after all?
Well, to be honest, it was all spiritual. I mean, you can believe this is what is normal to me, okay? I sometimes hear things or see things that are of a spiritual nature, and I heard a voice when I met him say, "You're going to marry him." And I didn't want to, so I avoided him because I had other plans going on. So it really was just spiritual and prayer. And from what I could see, he was the only person that was male that I was able to communicate on the same level as I did with my female best friend. Nobody else seemed to communicate like that on a deeper level that was give and take, that was, I don't even know how to put it, feeling and compassion and selfless, I guess. Like we both were able to have a selfless conversation, and it made it a lot more intimate. So there was that. And he seemed like he had good plans, and I really liked his testimony. We were in the same spot there.
Not anymore.
And I mean, the thing is that the LDS religion is so inclusive that when you say you're in the same spot with your testimony, you are on the same page of a lot of things. Like it is kind of, you've already thought about set determined topics and decided how you felt and been on board with it. And so we were on the same page in all the important ways. And
kids,
what
we wanted out of life,
our goals.
Yeah, I mean, we were lockstep.
I don't think there has ever been another married couple that was more, like, honestly, you and me, like, it was just, oh, I was missing a shoe before. Here's my other shoe. It was so easy.
Yeah.
Being married, like, it was just, I don't know.
So Neal qualifies as a shoe, but
I know, right?
Looking shoe, like a cross trainer.
One sexy shoe, babe.
You can wear it to dress events and otherwise. I do want to point out, and I want to say thank you very much for both of you being on the show, especially last minute. I think last night was the first time we got in touch, but also special thanks to Naomi for being the first believer on this show. I really don't want to just have an echo chamber going on here, so I'm kind of glad that we're getting a different perspective tonight. So thanks for being on there.
I was unaware that I was the first.
I know.
Did you set me up? Are you gonna take it hard on me? No. We're not gonna debate, right?
We'll see where we go. I didn't really. It's like your show. You also mentioned on your show, because we're going to talk the whole crap a little bit of the show about how you don't want to debate, because that's not really at least from your point of view, I don't think that would be as interesting a conversation than your relationship is interesting. Not just to me particularly, because I'm in the unequally yoked category as well, but just because maybe in today's times we feel more polarized. So to have people who are actually married, who are on opposite sides, maybe spiritually, but I'm pretty sure you're not on many other sides, it's good to get some how-to as to, like, how do you two do, how do you crazy kids do it, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, once he'd already roped you in and got
good.
kids, I mean,
I'm
come
not afraid
on,
anymore.
then he could come out, you know, as true self. But that's not the real story. So before we get on to other questions, and maybe we'll get Neal's perspective too, because you kind of spoke up too, but what, in your terms, let's describe what you think like equally yoked means, so we can kind of have a feeling for, you know, the name of your show and the term that you're talking about.
Okay, so the title of the show is biblical. I had never even heard the term until I had a very staunch Christian at work tell me, "Oh, you're unequally yoked." And so equally yoked in religious terms would be you're the same religion, you're on the same page, you believe the same things. And I think in Christian circles it would be you're both a believer in Jesus. So unequally yoked in some ways is an insult to the non-believer, because the non-believer is holding back the believer, so to speak, in their spiritual progress. I had a lot of questions when I did some research on the title, whether or not I really wanted to go with it, because it to me it seems like if you read the information, it's a slam on us. But it really fits it fits our situation, where one person in some cases is going one direction and the other person's going the opposite direction when you're supposed to be in the same yoke and moving along.
Yeah, I didn't like that name for that reason.
Yeah, yoked also, it's like you're kind of tied together, not like you've chosen to be together, but you're just kind of, we're stuck together, so let's trudge forward.
Yeah.
But how, let's see, how do we make the transition from, I guess, believer to non-believer? Of course, this is not exactly a short question. You've had 2 or 3 episodes to talk about it. But what was it like to kind of attempt to make yourself believe when you're having doubts, Neal? And then how did it kind of manifest and finally come out and you had to tell me?
Well, I was reading the Book of Mormon, and the thought that it might not be true kind of entered my mind. You know, honestly, thinking back, I think the seeds were planted in college when I decided I believed in evolution.
Which I talked you into.
Yeah, which you talked me into, evolution and pardon?
It's a good work.
Oh, and the age of the cosmos based on my astronomy classes. And I mean, biology and astronomy, even though they have nothing to do with my career, were 2 of my favorite classes in college because they really opened up my mind. And we got into but quite a few discussions with believing friends who are I believe still convinced that evolution is, made up. So that kind of started the progress of thinking more critically than what I had before. Stopped believing in the Book of Mormon and came to Naomi and said, I don't think I believe anymore. And we had this whole conversation where she kind of said, well, try it. And she questioned whether or not she could still be married to a non-believer. And she was, in her defense, she was just honestly thinking out loud, is this something I can do or can I do? I took it as though,
believer, I'm gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
and for me, it was about Jesus. Like, it wasn't even about Mormonism. It's like, I don't know if I can be with someone that doesn't believe in Jesus.
Yeah.
Because it's just such a big part of my life.
Yep. And then, so I decided to pretend to believe for the next 4 years. Went to church, taught lessons, bore my testimony, and then I had decided to start journaling my feelings. And at that point, it boiled over one night. I couldn't take it any longer. So we came to that. We talked and said, okay, let's agree that I don't need to go to church anymore. But Naomi said, I still want you to believe in God. So I found a Christian church, attended that for about a year. But the more I read the Bible, the more I realized it did not correspond with my beliefs in terms of like evolution. And also, I started reading the epistles of Paul, and I was like, these things contradict each other like crazy. And then I learned about predestination or Calvinism, and that was the final nail in the coffin. And I embraced my lack of belief wholeheartedly.
But is that part of Mormonism? I know you talked.
No.
You talked in the show about kind of knowing each other before you were born. Is that part of it, or?
I don't. It's not necessarily that there's a black and white doctrine, but it is a general belief that you knew people beforehand that you may know now, that we were all living in this pre-existence, as brothers and sisters and in God's presence with Jesus. And so we had to have interacted with people, right? And
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, that's kind of the belief.
Yeah, but the Christian concept of predestination is not a strong belief in Mormonism. There's kind of a light version, but the predestination that I was taught was, every action is predestined. If you're predestined to be saved,
or not,
and that's when I started thinking, okay, so what you're telling me is, if I choose to believe I'm predestined to be saved, but my wife, who I love, in your worldview, is not predestined to be saved unless she chose. So God chose me over her, and that was offensive, and I just couldn't take it.
That's not even how I would see it.
Yeah, but that's what I was.
And I don't even believe that.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard that before. So.
I think one advantage you have is in doing your show, you do get to find out about, like, hey, there's some things maybe we haven't talked about, or things that
every podcast
agree
every
on,
time.
or at least it's just, you see the movies where you see different points of view, and then everything totally changes, and you're like, well, that's what happens with just two people who even share the same house and have been together forever. You still have a different view. So I think that's okay. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I don't know if the ultimate goal would be to have your spouse be exactly the same as you. I don't know.
I don't think so.
Be that fun.
Not exactly, but
differences, but
I really enjoyed it when we were like a lot more on the same page. It just made it easier.
Yeah.
But easier isn't always better, right? I mean, I certainly have learned a lot.
Yeah. And
about
the makeup
myself.
sex has been great too.
There you go.
With who are you having that? No, I'm just kidding.
Wow. This is good
when
stuff.
is that happening?
Well, Naomi, what can you maybe go through what went through your mind when Neal finally told you that he was having a real crisis of faith?
Well, I don't necessarily remember it like he did. He came to me and told me he was doubting, not that he didn't believe, and questioning things. And so I was kind of like, wow, I don't know how depending on how far you go down this road, I don't know how I can handle that. And I just kind of thought, well, he'll go through his ups and downs of believing or not believing, which is what it looked like to me. Like there were times when he seemed to have faith and was in and believed, and then there were times when he was just out and totally on a different page, but then he'd come back. And so I just kind of saw that, and it wasn't until the night before Valentine's Day, I don't even remember something you had said.
Well, you had asked me to bear my testimony of Joseph Smith, and
no, that was way before that.
Oh, okay.
I didn't even get it then. I was in such a happy denial. And I knew I was just like, I can't handle this right now because there's a lot of other crap going on. But yeah, I asked you, do you even have a testimony? And he said, why do you ask? And I just said, that's not the answer I was hoping for. And we didn't say anything else the rest of the night. I just turned my back to him and cried myself to sleep.
Yeah.
And I don't even know that I actually had thoughts as much as I was just like, I felt like the foundation of my whole world had just been ripped out from under me. And I had no idea what was going to come next. I didn't know what it meant. It was scary. It was just the complete unknown. And the what ifs that a brain goes through are usually not good what ifs. They're usually, it just, what if it turns to this? What if it turns to that? And I don't know. And I felt lied to.
Well, you were lied to.
Yeah.
You were.
I was. And I wondered, like, because you had been on the road for so long, I only saw him on Saturdays and part of Sunday. I was like, well, does he have some hidden family somewhere else? Like, I don't know this man. I don't know what he believes anymore. I don't know what he thinks is right, what he thinks is wrong. I don't know. It's all up for grabs. All of his opinions are up for grabs now because the main base of it has changed.
Right.
Like, how do you decide what's right and wrong if you're not told by a deity?
Right.
Like, I don't know. How do you live with the thought that you don't have a soul? What does that mean for eternity?
Do you still have those questions?
Yeah, but I think I've asked most of them that bug me, and the ones that I haven't asked, I don't want answers to.
Okay.
I have to live without the answers because I'm afraid, so afraid of what they might be.
Okay.
And I would rather guess that there's something else than know that they are that.
Right.
But yeah, like just before this whatever this is, what is this, YouTube?
It is YouTube, but it also will be available in podcast form, so it's also on iTunes and Stitcher. But the YouTube version was kind of the original. It's how I record this show, so it's just easier for me. So yeah, that's why I call it the Zachrilege cast, because it's kind of a podcast and kind of a unique feel.
I like that. So
It's
yeah,
so
even
harder
before we got hooked up, I was asking him, so is Jesus good or bad in your mind? Like my idea of Jesus and what that means. You know, are you on board? Do you have problems with it? I was just kind of trying to get a feel of that, because I don't think I've been that specific before.
Right.
About just Jesus.
Right. Well, you were going to ask something.
But go ahead.
Sorry.
I am on one. So sorry.
No, I like this. This is exactly why people should listen to your show. And get caught up, people. You only have to, it's kind of like a Netflix show, like 11 episodes. You can binge listen and you'll be caught up in no time.
Yeah.
It's like a
Each
weekend.
episode is only about an hour or so.
Yes, nowadays an hour is short for a podcast. But I kind of see where Naomi's coming from, because I think over time I kind of came out as atheist, and that's not, in a way, it's like my wife was like, this isn't what I signed up for. Like I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it wasn't like we were both professing testimony and going to church together before, but it wasn't like I had been openly sure of what my beliefs were. But how, like when you originally got together, how does a testimony work? Like when you asked him about the testimony, what's the answer that he used to give or he was supposed to give?
It's not like I asked him, oh, bear your testimony. I had heard it. The week of each Sunday, you have an opportunity, if you feel so inclined, to get up and give a short, 2 to 4 minute
spiel
professing what you believe.
I think testimony in Mormonism is probably a little bit different than testimony in Christianity. Mormonism is the goal of the testimony is to have a spiritual witness that Joseph Smith was a prophet, that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, that the Book of Mormon is true, and that the current prophet is really speaking to God. And you stand up and profess that you know that is the case.
Things like that. The prayer works.
Those are the 4 cornerstones of a testimony. Those are the things they want you to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say what I want. So.
Yeah.
But are you more compelled to say it, or are you just like, I have to let this out? Okay, this has to come out of me.
Yeah, I feel like
spiritually moved.
I do. Like sometimes I feel like, oh, it's not my turn. I'm here to listen and just have a silent spiritual moment. But sometimes there's like, okay, I have something to say for someone. I don't know who, but I feel like it's important.
Or sometimes, well, not for you. This isn't for you, but this is for me. Sometimes there's a high up leader of the church in the congregation and you want to show off. And so you go up and bear your testimony.
You did that?
Yeah.
Oh.
Uh-oh, trouble. Someone's sleeping in the closet tonight.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I that makes sense. I kind of knew that about you, because you said you did, as a kid, you wanted to please your mom and make her cry and be happy or whatever, have a movement of emotion. And I'm sure every kid has done that.
Yeah.
They want to make their parents proud, and
I did that when you and I were married.
Oh, to look good, or to make
To
the
look
parents
good.
look good?
To look good. Gene Cook was in your congregation, and so I stood up and bore my testimony.
He was?
Yeah.
Gosh, I don't even remember that.
Yeah. Anyway, most Mormons will know who Gene Cook is because he said he had an experience with Mick Jagger on an airplane.
He did?
Yeah, where Mick Jagger told him that his music was designed to invite people to have sex and to worship the devil or something like that. I'm serious. You can find it.
I believe you. These are like nonsense facts to me that I'm like, but that's not what it's about. Like, why would I waste my time on that? That's the sort of way that we think different. He gets into all the nitty gritty, and I'm like, okay, what's the basic idea of what I'm supposed to be doing here in this life? What am I thinking that I should go as far as direction? And so we just work different.
Yep.
Which is good in certain areas.
Yep.
I think so. I mean, obviously, episode 1, you two true lovebirds. That's just, it warms the heart to see it. I mean, not just, oh, you guys have been married X amount of years. It's like there's true affection. I really like that about the show. That's a chemistry that you can't really just get on a show. So look at that. That's nice. So we will continue this show just in a second. I want to get my live read. I always do this one late because I'm just enjoying the conversation. But I wanted to give a real clap for Dogma Debate finishing up their 24-hour fundraiser last weekend. They raised more than $50,000 for the Secular Student Alliance. And thanks to a boost by Todd Stiefel, their total ended up higher than $100,000. So that's pretty good considering they were trying to raise $40,000 for the Secular Student Alliance that was a little short this year. So you probably should listen to the show. Check it out. We make the joke that Dogma Debate's one of those really long podcasts, so really a 24-hour show is like 2 episodes. But it's pretty impressive feat to be able to get beyond 24 straight hours and do that. So we were kind of talking about, you got into the fact that sometimes you would give your testimony kind of as a show-off measure. Do you think that was part of what you were doing during those 4 years, like the whole fake it till you make it? Like you're really trying almost to force yourself to believe?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Part of Mormonism is you get callings where you do volunteer to do things with the congregation. And my calling was to be an elders quorum instructor where I stood up in front of a group of men and taught them similar to what you'd learn in high school class. Teacher stands up and talks and asks questions, and you encourage a discussion, and at the end of it you always bear your testimony. And I definitely said things to be part of the norm that I didn't necessarily believe deep down, but at the same time I convinced myself when I said them that I did believe them. So I was a walking contradiction in terms of what I believed and what I said I believed and where I was. It's tough. It's difficult to come out and forcefully say, I believe this when it is in such conflict with your culture and with your upbringing.
And for a long time, I would say, okay, but what do you believe about this? Like, even after you came out and said, okay, I don't believe, you're like, I don't know. I still have to define that. I don't know.
That to me is one of the funnest parts most rewarding parts of not having a belief in God and being atheist is the process of discovery, of self-discovery and of the world around you. Like you're seeing things through new glasses that you had never seen before, which it's challenging, but it's also rewarding.
So yeah, he was on a big journey for quite a while. And, even after he knew he believed in some things, but not others. But as a spouse, that may be a really cool journey for you, hun. But I remember just saying to you, let me know when you know who you are.
Yeah.
Let me know so that I can figure out who I'm married to. And it took you're still doing it, but I feel more like I know who you are.
Right.
Just this past what, 6 months?
Yeah, 6 months.
Well, Naomi, do you think it's harder, I don't know, the fact what he believed, the fact that he didn't believe in God, or the fact that he was kind of going through this struggle without you until he finally had to share it with you?
Yes. All of that.
Yeah.
Pick one, I could talk about it. Yeah, no, it was all hard, every bit of it. And I mean, I was in a place spiritually where I wanted somebody to be my partner with raising the kids, with in a spiritual sense.
Saying prayers.
Yeah. And so not only was I like scared because I didn't know who I was married to, he didn't even know who he was, and I didn't know what was going to come and all the what ifs that were going on in my head. But here I was feeling already totally overwhelmed in my life in multiple areas, but specifically spiritually. And he's in my home fighting against it. There's always this feeling of, get it out of my home, get it out of my kids' minds.
And,
It's awful. It's horrible.
There's that old saying, what would Jesus do? And you guys,
I
it's
can't
what would
say
Dad
that.
say? What would Dad do?
Yeah, I can't. I mean, it's just alone. Alone is a really good word of what I hated the most. I was alone. It was me and God against the world.
Well,
all I had.
Naomi, do you think you can choose what you believe, or do you think it's just you believe what you believe?
I think it's both. I think you choose what to put into your head. I think you choose what to study. I think you choose who to hang out with. And I think there's so many different things in life that affect what your beliefs end up becoming and affect that journey. That, yes, you're the core person that you are, and you're led to certain general truths because of how you are as a person, but it's also very much affected by other outer influences.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair? Is that a good explanation? I don't know.
I mean, I don't think you choose what you believe.
But there are other influences.
Yeah, there are influences. But to me, you research and you read something and you come to a conclusion.
But then there's like, why did you research that?
Because you had questions. Because I had questions.
Yeah. Well, I was in a place where, and sometimes I still am now, I know what I need, and I need to believe in God. I have to, like, just to make it through life. I do. And so I purposefully sometimes avoid things that I go, I don't want to go into that. No, you can't. That's our daughter. We're all naked in here. No, we're doing a podcast, hon.
That's the best line in show history. Thanks.
Hello. Yeah, well, I don't know what I was saying, so it doesn't matter.
No.
Oh, so yeah, so I avoid things because I don't want to go down the rabbit hole. I've seen what going down the rabbit hole has done to my husband, and it has been a painful, horrible experience for him, and there's been a lot of unhappy, and I don't want to go through that. And so I steer away from that.
Does that mean deep down you believe that if you went down the rabbit hole that you would stop believing?
I don't know. I don't have to know. Isn't that great? I don't have to know.
I think you really don't believe, and you're just avoiding.
Really? I think you really believe, and you're just like, don't want to live by it. So,
like, we're having a real quick, like, a believer, non-believer arguing on Twitter kind of thing. Well, I had this revelation for God that only I had, which proves to me that God exists, and you cannot know that, so you don't. And then the non-believer is like, well, I have all these proofs that, you're full of it. And personal revelation doesn't, mean that much to most other people, because you can't copy that experience, but you can definitely copy having the kind of feelings that you consider to be spiritual, right? Because you have these feelings that you share. like when you first two got together, you considered that those feelings, there was a spiritual aspect to it, right?
Which he did too at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
So yeah,
Where the spiritual feelings
basically,
go,
here's what I saw him do. He concentrated more on questions and intellect and disregarded anything spiritual and feeling.
Which I think is a more valid way to test truth.
He decided the spirit didn't exist and feelings were not valid to
trust
at all.
Well, atheists have feelings too, you know, and we have things that happen to us that we don't understand. We just kind of, I don't know. I can't say that religious people don't want to know what their feelings are. They put it in the bucket that they want to put it in.
Maybe he just thinks you can't trust it. And I feel like feelings are things that we are picking up from our senses all around us, and we haven't put it together in an educational way, and they're feedback telling us something that wants to come out.
Well, let me tell you something. So we were on a podcast called Infants on Thrones, right? And they just released a podcast where they are interviewing somebody who they call him the Space Cowboy, who does does mushrooms, like, and he's talking about the spiritual experiences that because he said, you know, he doesn't believe in God, but these experiences that he's had on mushrooms have convinced him that there is some sort of divine, well, I don't know if it's convinced him, but it's harder for him to dismiss the fact. But it's all because of brain chemistry. These things play with your brain chemistry, and you can have these cerebral spiritual experiences just because your serotonin is a little bit off.
Or does your serotonin do those things because you're having that experience? If I see an apple, you're going to see something light up in my brain. Does that mean I didn't see it, that it's just the lighting up in my brain was stimulated? Which comes first?
The egg.
An apple was an apple.
Yeah, these are things I've thought about. In my life, my feelings, my intuition has been more on than, I wouldn't be married to you without feelings, just.
Yeah, that's true.
TBH, as my daughters would say.
So thank Joseph Smith. Okay.
Yeah.
What about Joseph Smith?
Thank Joseph Smith.
Yeah,
Neal.
thank him. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be married.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's cool. Whatever.
He's your guy.
Well, he's a guy. There's good and bad, I'll tell you that. He sees more bad.
Yes, I do.
You just see all the bad and the whiskey. So only before we continue with the second live read, now this is also in to do with the dogma debate. There was a bet. People who showed up on the show, there were 24 hours and 24 podcasters, and they made bets with each other regarding who would raise more money during their hour. So Bill from Barroom Atheist made a bet with Bobby from No Religion Required, and guess who is wearing the dress at RegentCon 2017? That will be Bill. So Bill from Barroom Atheist will be wearing a special outfit in Hickory, so y'all should all be there. So listen to Barroom Atheist for drunken fun, a unique reading of the Bible, and No Religion Required for a southern spin on atheism. Plus, look at that, somewhat less drunken reading of the Bible, and poor Miss Ashley without her sweet tea for a month. That's a harsh thing. So, Neal, did you get off Mormonism just so you could drink beer?
Yes.
Be honest. Tell the truth.
Much more complex than that.
Well, yeah, I mean, my whole goal in life was to drink beer and drink coffee. And had it not been for coffee and beer, I would still be a Mormon.
He wouldn't have started questioning, obviously.
Yeah, no, I mean, it kind of comes, it's like what we talked about, what comes first, beer and coffee and that type of stuff is a byproduct of non-belief. You give yourself permission. Oh, this is no longer against what I believe. Therefore, I can try it. I can try it and
see what I think.
I enjoy it. I am enjoying a nice glass of Glenfiddich tonight. So here's to anybody else who might be drinking.
Who's that? I don't know anybody like that.
Yeah.
But you do have to admit, you were trying that stuff while you were seeking out answers.
No. I had reached the conclusion.
I call bullcrap on that.
I had reached the conclusion that it wasn't true before I started drinking. It's true. I started drinking after
What's the deal with conference? You were like,
well,
I got to get my act together.
Well,
I had beers this week. And you were like ready to change. Like you were coming.
Yeah, that lasted a week.
You were coming at me like, what's wrong with you? Get on the train, baby.
Yeah, and
get
then
your spiritual crap together.
Then it fell off. Then I fell apart.
I don't know. These are things I don't have answers to. I just know it's really complex. None of us are ever going to know everything that went into it. But it sucked for you.
Yeah.
And it sucked for me.
Yeah.
And here we are just trying to make it good.
Therapy with Zachrilege.
Yeah, I'm not officially licensed or anything. I could license myself. I don't know. You can get like a humanist celebrant, but I don't think you can get anything through the mail for therapy. And I think that's a good thing.
Yep.
Honestly. So in the kind of introduction, I don't know if it's in every introduction to your show, but the ones I've listened to, I believe it's your son who talks about wanting you to come back to the church. And that is just like it's a hard thing to hear. Mm-hmm. I think no matter what your beliefs are. So how do you deal with what you're going through and with your kids who have probably been in the church all their lives and possibly baptized depending on their age?
Yeah, there is a certain amount of, I guess the word is cognitive dissonance. You kind of have, or emotional separation. You have to be comfortable. I have to be comfortable in what I believe. And allow my kids to continue to believe what they do. But it doesn't mean that it's not hard to see the kids go to church and ask me if I want to come, which doesn't happen that often, but
they don't ask
I know
anymore.
They
ever.
don't, they used to, but did they?
They don't ask you to pray. They don't know.
Yeah, but it's tough sometimes knowing that they want that in their life and I don't provide that to them anymore. Because it really is part of the expectation of Mormon culture that you'll do these things, and my kids don't get that, and it's really tough. Even though I don't believe, it's really tough not being able to, or not really providing that for them anymore, which we are going to try and provide that a little bit.
So you don't go to church at all, then everybody goes but you?
Yeah, I watch NASCAR.
He has the Church of NASCAR, and he has his group, the
Hickory Humanist Alliance. Gene, who introduced us.
Which I really like them. They're great people. I go to a lot of their activities just because it's fun.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like there's a center, like an epicenter, and because of ReasonCon and all the people who live there, I've probably interviewed 25% of the people, a friend from North Carolina. So it's very North Carolina centric, which is close to me. I'm a nice, 4-hour drive from there. Atlanta, it's not so bad. And in episode 3, you had your second oldest daughter was on the show kind of talking about her beliefs. What was it like deciding to bring one of your kids on the show and just kind of talk openly about beliefs?
They were all begging to come on, actually. Oh. That one wasn't sure. She didn't really care. She's kind of our one that's like, whatever.
She's the one who stuck her head through the curtains.
Yeah. Whatever.
Well, it was that week she had just kind of come clean to you that she didn't really believe anymore. And so we felt like we wanted to get her on while it was still raw and fresh in the mind, because, you forget those emotions. You become numb to them after a while. So it was I think it was a good choice to bring her on. It was probably harder for you, Naomi, than me.
I hated hearing it. I loved getting the clarification of exactly what it was, because we didn't go into a lot of detail beforehand of, you know, kind of where she was and what she was going at. But I kind of do the cognitive dissonance thing with that. I put it in a box and I say, she's going to make her choices like every other person does. And my job is to love the crap out of her and be there for her, whatever she needs. And I try to be okay with that, even though I think some of the choices she's making and some of the things she believes are wrong, I guess.
But you feel
But
it's
she
more
thinks
important.
I'm wrong too, so.
But you feel like it's more important to love her than to force her to
the
see things your way.
The relationship that's what it's all about.
Which
and if anything, my like vision of Jesus, that's what it's all about. It's love and relationships.
Right.
So I can live what I believe better which is kind of why I like the humanists, because you have to allow people to believe what they believe. You need to be okay with that.
You're a Mormon humanist.
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
It's very weird when the Mormon is sitting there in what was that booth called? Like it was, we're good without God or something.
Oh.
I don't know. And I was hanging out with them.
There were other Mormons there?
No. It was just me. I'm in a really weird spot. What is
Yeah, I
that
was wondering. So you're used to being like the only Mormon. Well, just real quick, like how did you get from Utah to North Carolina?
Job. I was on the road for my prior employer for 6.5 years. I was a consultant, and my final project was where I am now employed full time. And it's been nice to be able to come home every night and see my family. Our youngest son, who is now 7, up until the time I got a job where I worked in the same city in which I lived, only knew a life with his dad on the road. And that was it was really not fun to think about.
It was sad. He came home to Neal one night and said, you know, my friend so-and-so, his dad comes home for dinner every night. Can you believe that?
Yeah, that's when it's
that
like,
was the
okay,
clincher.
It's time to make a change. You only get to live with your family once, and being on the road is no way to raise a family.
It was killing me too.
Yeah, it's gotta be tough. Just not being around all the time, but you are supporting the family at the same time. So
yeah,
it's good.
I mean, he works a lot of hours, but we still see him way more than we did.
He's back, which is good.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Naomi, what's your thoughts? Because you have the youngest son who's about to turn 8. What are your thoughts on the Mormon kind of tradition of baptizing at age 8?
Let's see, this is one of the rabbit holes. I'm like, sure.
Fortunately, he doesn't believe in Santa Claus.
Yeah.
The son or me? Don't tell me. Don't spoil it. Everybody has rabbit holes.
Okay, so I believe when you are at a stage in life where you feel like capable of making a decision and somewhat understanding it, that you should have the option of being baptized. Which they usually say the age of accountability is no sooner than 8.
So do you think he's going to be ready at 8?
Don't feel like he's ready. And so that leaves me in a weird spot, because all of his friends, when they're turning 8, are going to get baptized, just because it's just kind of like tradition.
It's a rite of passage.
Culture. It's just
a rite
culture.
of passage. Yeah.
And all of his other siblings have, and you don't want him to feel left out. And yet, I don't know. I have mixed feelings.
We haven't even really talked about it.
It's coming up in March, and I'm screwed.
Yeah.
I don't know.
March.
That's true. I didn't even think of that aspect of the kind of the sliding scale of like when people reach kind of a maturity, like some people become more mature in their teens, some people not until they're 41.
Yeah.
So it's
Still working on it.
yeah, exactly. I'm still trying to be an adult. Occasionally, I play one during the day, and somehow pull it off. But I don't know. There's that aspect of having a kid get baptized, because my nephews are the family's Catholic, and they were confirmed at about that age, 8 years old, and they're standing in front of a priest who's telling them that they're going to be eating and drinking Jesus, and they have to decide to join the church. And I don't think that at that point there's any choice. I think they're doing it. There's no way out of it. But they're making, I feel like the choice is sometimes being made for the child, whereas you wouldn't tell your kid at age 8, you're going to marry this person or you're going to have this career. So that's the part of it that is troubling for me. But I guess it's interesting to hear that you're kind of thinking about it, because all your other kids went through that at 8.
Yes, and it was important for me to tell them, you don't have to do this. And, if you don't feel ready, or, you need to tell me what it is you believe, why do you want to be baptized? And you certainly don't have to. We're not going to love you any less or think less of you.
Yeah.
The one that poked her head in, she was the one that was like, really? Because for her, it's always like she has to know she has a choice. It was the weirdest thing as a kid.
Yeah.
Well, I can't ask anymore, but I mean, I'm not a parent, so really the whole parent stuff is like, it's a totally alien culture to me. It's almost as alien as trying to imagine what it's like to be a believer, because some people who are, atheist podcasters or just atheists were believers, but I never was. So it's always trying to get into the shoes of a former believer and then a current believer, just to kind of think, oh, so that's okay. I'm starting to, feel that, or at least understand or empathize, because I mean, ultimately, as you mentioned, the whole humanist connection, we're all human beings, so we have that in common, and we need to remember that. But I do want to emphasize, you guys are both fucking awesome, so thank you very much for being on the show. I want to just re-emphasize that as we continue going. So what have you learned, and I guess maybe take your turns answering this, what you've learned through doing the show and through your therapy that you've had about communicating as a married couple?
Well, I think communication in marriage is paramount. I don't know if you've heard the podcast where we talked a lot about how we didn't communicate for a long time. More specifically, I didn't communicate with Naomi. That's when we were the furthest apart. This podcast has allowed at least me to be more frank in my communication with her, because it's like, oh, she doesn't have a choice but to take it, because we're putting on a show. And it, in some ways, it gives me a little bit more courage too, to say, okay, I'm going to let my vulnerability show to the world, and also to Naomi. And the other fun thing is that she cries a lot when I communicate honestly and openly, and we can do a drinking game, which unfortunately doesn't happen that often, but it's important to be able to drink while you're doing a podcast.
Take a drink every time she cries.
Yeah.
That's the rule.
What about you, Naomi?
Yeah, I mean, communication was number one on my list for marriage under the spiritual crap. Which is why I was attracted to you. And these conversations that we're having now on podcasts are what I was missing beforehand. Those were the kind of conversations I was used to. But we had a class in high school called Adult Roles, and one of the chapters was called Fair Fighting. And the idea is, most people think it's not good to fight, but they were saying you're going to fight, you're going to have disagreements, So you need to have a set of ground rules of how to do it fairly and in a way where you can hear each other, validate each other, and not
Shame.
do the least amount of injury with shaming and guilting, and be productive about it. And that has been one of the best things that has ever happened in my life, was that class, along with my parents were very good at modeling that. But I mean, to break it down simply, that model, if you're going, what the heck is she talking about? It's basically you say an I feel blank. So like an I feel statement when such and such happens.
I feel horny when you strip naked.
Because, and you explain
Communication.
the reason why, and then you offer this is kind of what I would like. And that way, when you're approaching them with your feelings, instead of attacking them with, you did this, you did that, you don't go on the defense.
Right.
So that's the basics. Obviously, there's a lot more to it, but we had to get back into that. And we had to believe that the other one wasn't going to leave us or hate us or fall apart with what we were going to say.
Yeah, that was it. Because I think there's a fear that if you communicate honestly, the other person's going to just walk away. And we had to blatantly, explicitly say,
I'm staying.
You're safe. You're safe to talk to me.
Make a pact. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because and breaking, the fear of this person is going to break. I don't know what will happen to them. They'll go nuts. They'll, I'll be driving them to the mental institution because the depression will overtake them, or whatever your fear is, whatever you think it is, what it means that your spouse is going to fall apart.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Learning how to fight. And I think my personal issue, at least for me, is I just have trouble with conflict. So I think I'll go along with something as long as it doesn't harm me that badly and not deal with it. And then when we end up getting to a fight, it's such a high level that it does become this just toxic thing. We're not communicating. You're just both really angry, and you're kind of that angry version of yourself that, before they eat the Snickers bar part, where you're not being listened to and it doesn't matter what the other person says. And you don't want to get to that point, but at the same time, you have to get it in your, thick skulls that for all the, lovey-dovey feelings you had, you're going to have conflicts when you're married. That's what happens in adult relationships that you don't often get told, and you have to figure out how to deal with it. And you don't get a lot of, it's cool that you had the model from your parents on like how to deal with it. Because I don't know if I ever saw my parents argue with each other or work stuff out like that.
And I think, part of religion, part of the paradigm, at least for me, I'm not going to speak for all religious people, was that if you're on the same page spiritually, you're going to be a lot more likely to agree on things. And when you remove that element from the relationship, the communication becomes even more important, and the willingness to see the other person's perspective. We don't see each other's perspective all the time. We see
it and we hate it.
Yeah. So it's not like
Let's
this.
Be honest.
Yeah, it's not like this. I don't want to paint a picture like, oh, we're the ideal couple, because I still get annoyed with her beliefs, and she doesn't like what I believe, and it's a constant battle emotionally for me, internally, to cope with this.
Mm-hmm.
But you're coping. Look at you coping.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That was off camera. So
yeah, it was, right?
What do people have to look forward to in upcoming episodes of your show?
We're trying to think about some sort of a Christmas episode that we're going to record this week. Talk about how we handle Christmas now as a believer and a non-believer. Go ahead.
My kids also want to have an episode where everybody's on and it's Meet the Winters, and they all get to kind of talk about what it's like for them individually. It's the little ones that are jealous.
And one thing that I want to talk about, and Naomi isn't sure she agrees with this, is you can only talk about being in a mixed belief marriage so much. I wanted to delve into other topics that we deal with in our daily lives, like pain, depression, and how those impact our marriage, and so try and deal with other topics that come up in our relationship and how we deal with them. So
it just came to me. See, I would feel comfortable with that if we discussed it from this stance of a non-believer might approach those subjects and solutions for those subjects in a different way than a believer would.
right.
For instance, with pain, I would be wanting blessings, healing blessings, priesthood blessing, and you would be advocating for something else, and we might feel like the other one's not approaching it correctly or making it happen right.
I think that simplifies it, but yeah, I see
that
what
makes
you're
it
saying.
better, right?
Yeah,
because that's more of the spirit of the show, and I think there's never going to be nothing to talk about because every day something comes up, and that's marriage for you.
yeah.
There's always something we can go, something happened this week and it made us think this, and let's talk about that.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a good tagline. Let's talk about it. So where can people find your show online and on the iTunes and Facebook and all that good stuff?
Facebook, we've got a page, public page, Unequally Yoked Podcast. I've also started a secret group, and the only way that I know how to invite people into the group is if they friend me, Neil Winters on Facebook, and then just let me know that you want to be added. We haven't had much activity in the group, but it's there.
I've been awful. I haven't gotten on and posted or answered questions or anything.
Yeah.
I am reading stuff, your comments. I love them.
Yeah, and we have a website, unequallyyokepodcast.com or unequally-yoked.net. Both will take you to the same place, but I figured the podcast.com is easier to remember. So we don't have a Twitter handle. We don't
What
have
is a Twitter
Instagram. We're just on Facebook and the internet.
What are these things? See, I don't even know.
Twitter is the bomb.
We got
I
a
prefer
Twitter.
to, so I feel like some people either go Facebook or Twitter, but I mainly do Facebook because that seems to be where all the American atheists are. There aren't as many on Twitter for some reason. Oh, it's okay. Someday you will see the light, Naomi. No, that's okay.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. Hey, at least I believe in evolution, right?
There you go. Yeah, exactly. You're with it.
You're all trying. Okay. I was the one that convinced him of that.
See, you've led him down the correct path,
Right.
One way or the other.
Right.
Someday, you're both thinking, oh, one day they're coming my way. They're coming my way, and it's going to happen, and it's going to be like the lightning bolt, and it's going to be really easy.
It'll be like
everything else is
Bazinga.
like Bazinga.
Do you think I'll ever come your way?
I have hope.
I used to, but that's how I am. I hope, but I really don't think you will.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not that important.
There's got to be a cliffhanger for season 2 of your show, right?
Right.
Will he, will she, or won't he? On the next season on Equally Yoked. Okay, well, thanks a lot for being on the show. We'll do a little bit of house cleaning on my side. So Evolution and Reason, they like my page on Facebook, so why won't you? Treasure and love all of my subscribers and followers, even if you think that I'm going to the extra hot hell where all beer tastes like hot Pepto-Bismol. So if you want to support the show, you can be like Bobby, Hugh, and Teote, men of distinction, whether they listen to the show or not. Go to patreon.com/Zachrilege, and that's ZACHRILEGE, and I can still spell it after 2 beers. So follow me on Twitter. Listen, you can like the Zachrilege Cast page on Facebook and send all hate mail to zachrilege.cast@gmail.com. Thanks to Naomi and Neal, mainly Naomi, for being on tonight. Stay safe, and if you need to chat, I'm available. If you're an atheist and feel alone, you are not alone. Reach out. Let's chat and get that human connectiveness that keeps people coming back every Sunday. Stay skeptical, and I love all of y'all. So good night.